Before I tell you how my husband destroyed my life with my best friend's daughter and how I took every last thing back, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because this isn't just another cheating story. This is the story of how I went from a 43-year-old expired wife to the woman who watched them both lose everything. My name is Natalie, and this is how my loyalty almost killed me. I was 43 when it happened. 43 sounds like such a settled number, doesn't it? Old enough to know better, young enough to still feel everything. I wasn't some naive teenager who didn't understand men, money, or consequences. I had a career before my husband ever had a business card. I had my own condo, my own savings, my own health insurance. I had stability. Then I met Logan. He was 24 when I met him at a networking event I almost skipped because I was tired. He was standing alone by the bar with the cheap suit, scuffed shoes, and eyes that burned like he'd swallowed a storm and didn't know how to put it down. We talked for hours. He told me about all the things he wanted to do but couldn't afford. I told him about all the things I had already done and how I was tired of doing them alone. He laughed when I paid for our drinks. "I swear I'll pay you back one day," he said. "You can pay me back by not wasting your potential," I replied. I didn't know I'd just given a man with no brakes access to a full tank of gas. When he finally decided he wanted to start his own real estate company, he had no money, no clients, and no idea how to structure a business. What he did have was charm, hunger, and me. I liquidated part of my savings. I helped him file the incorporation paperwork. I set up payroll, invoicing, vendor contracts, basic legal templates. I built the spreadsheets that would later be used to accuse me of crimes I didn't commit. I registered an early LLC under my maiden name when a tax attorney suggested it might protect us from some early risks. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. The first few years were brutal. We worked out of our tiny apartment. Logan took any listing he could get. I worked my full-time job during the day and did his books at night. There were months where we argued over whether we could afford groceries and heat in the same week. Sometimes he resented me for being calm. Sometimes I resented him for needing so much. But the business grew, slowly at first, then faster. A big investor believed in him, then another. He landed a commercial property that changed everything. We moved into a nicer apartment, then a house. He hired his first agent, his second, his fifth. People in Charleston started to know his name. "Logan's killing it," they'd say. "Logan's a genius. Logan built an empire from nothing." No one mentioned me, sitting at our kitchen table, reconciling accounts at midnight while he posted celebratory selfies with clients. It didn't bother me. Not then. I liked being the quiet one. I liked knowing the numbers and the deadlines and the fine print. Other people could have the spotlight. I had the control. Or at least I thought I did. My best friend Rachel and I met in college, two broke girls sharing textbooks and instant noodles. We survived everything together: bad boyfriends, broken pars, health scares, family deaths. When her husband walked out on her when their daughter Ava was 4, I was the one who helped her negotiate with the landlord, fill out assistance forms, and get a second job that didn't kill her. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Rachel told me 1,000 times over the years. "You'd survive," I always answered. "You're stubborn." Ava grew up half in her mother's house and half in mine. When Rachel picked up overtime shifts, Ava slept on my couch, watched movies with me, did homework at my dining table. I bought her school supplies when Rachel couldn't. I slipped cash into birthday cards. I stood in the audience at her high school graduation and clapped like I'd given birth to her myself. By 28, Ava was stunning. Tall, legs for days, a tiny waist, big brown eyes, flawless skin. She knew how to pose in photos, how to angle her face toward the light, how to make people look twice without even trying. She drifted through jobs. A few months as a receptionist, a few months in retail, a brief attempt at a social media marketing assistant role.
She just hasn't found her thing yet, Rachel said one afternoon, exasperated but soft. She's smart, she just gets bored. We were in my kitchen, sipping wine. Logan had just come back from a networking brunch and was loosening his tie. "I'm drowning in admin," I said without really thinking. "She could do part-time secretary work for us. Answer phones, schedule, help with documents. It'll give her structure and some real experience." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "You'd do that?" "Of course," I said. "She's family." Logan smiled, that charming, polished smile he wore for investors. "Family helps family," he said. "Besides, we could use some youthful energy at the office." I didn't hear the warning in that sentence then. I do now. Ava started the following Monday. The first version of Ava, secretary, was sweet, eager, almost annoyingly grateful. She arrived early, with coffee for everyone. She asked where things went. She scribbled notes. She told everyone how lucky she was to learn from a power couple. She posted a photo of our office on Instagram with the caption, "So grateful for Auntie Nat and Uncle Logan for believing in me. Time to boss up." I liked her. I was proud of her. I bragged about her to Rachel constantly. "She's picking things up so fast," I said. "She actually organized the archives and color-coded them. I've been meaning to do that for years." Rachel smiled like the sun had finally come up. She just needed someone to see her. The second version of Ava emerged slowly. The hemlines got higher. The heels got taller. The neckline of her blouses slid lower week by week, like a quiet, steady descent. Her makeup sharpened. Her lipstick darkened. She traded soft ponytails for glossy waves that bounced when she laughed at Logan's jokes. I started noticing how often she was in his office with the door half closed. I started noticing how often he laughed when she was around, the kind of laugh he hadn't used with me in years. I started noticing the way she would accidentally brush his arm when she passed him a file. I told myself to stop being paranoid. I was 43, he was 39, she was 28. I told myself that men could look without touching. I told myself that even if he noticed her, he would never disrespect me like that. Not after everything we'd built. Not after everything I'd done. One evening, I walked past his office and heard them talking. I only caught a small snippet. "She's like a mom to everyone," Ava said, laughing softly. "You're the one with all the edge." I froze. Logan replied with a tone I didn't recognize. "You think I'm edgy?" "Please," she said. "You walk into a room and own it. She walks into a room and organizes it." They both laughed. Something in me flinched. That night, I tried to bring it up casually as we were getting ready for bed. "Do you think Ava's clothes are appropriate for the office?" I asked. Logan shrugged. "She's 28. That's how they dress now." "She leans over your desk a lot," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I'm worried clients might get the wrong impression." He rolled his eyes. "You sound old, Nat. She's just being friendly. Don't turn into that jealous older wife stereotype." Jealous older wife. The words landed like acid in a hairline crack I didn't know I had. I let it go. I shouldn't have. The first real punch landed in the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon. I had a full cart, normal stuff, chicken, vegetables, cereal, that overpriced yogurt Logan liked. I swiped our joint card. Declined. I frowned, tried again, declined. "There must be some mistake," I said, my cheeks warming as people shifted impatiently behind me. "Do you want to try another card?" the cashier asked. I used my personal card and left with my heart pounding.
Sitting in the parking lot, I opened my banking app. Every account connected to the business, frozen. Our joint account, flagged. My name, highlighted in red next to multiple alerts. My phone rang before I could process any of it. Login. "What did you do?" he shouted the second I answered. "What are you talking about?" I said. "Don't play stupid, Natalie," he snapped. "Why are my investors emailing me asking if you've been siphoning funds out of the accounts?" My mouth went dry. That's not possible. I haven't. There are offshore transfers with your login, your approvals, your digital signature, he said. His voice was shaking, but it wasn't with fear. It was fury. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know what this looks like?" "There has to be a mistake," I whispered. "Someone hacked." He laughed without humor. "You think some random hacker decided to move money in increments that skirt reporting limits, using vendor invoices that only you handle? You think a stranger knows our internal coding?" I gripped the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles went white. "Logan, I swear to you, I didn't do this. I would never." "You need to get a lawyer," he said. And then he hung up. I drove straight to the office, my mind buzzing with static. Security stopped me at the door. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to walk past. "It's Natalie." The guard stepped in front of me. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was told not to let you in." I laughed because the alternative was screaming. "What are you talking about? I am the operations director." "I have orders," he said, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "You need to speak to Mr. Carter." I looked through the glass doors toward the reception desk. Ava was sitting there in a pale blue dress that hugged her hips like it had been painted on. She was scrolling on her phone, a slight smile on her lips. When she saw me, her smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. She stood and walked toward the doors, heels clicking. "It's okay, James," she said to the guard. "I'll talk to her." She stepped just close enough that the glass between us felt like a joke. "Ava," I said, my voice shaking, "what is going on?" Her lips curved. It was almost gentle. Almost. "Logan said you're not allowed in the building during the investigation," she said softly. What investigation?" I asked. "Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft? I don't know the exact terms." She tilted her head. "I just know your name is all over the paperwork." My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear her. "That doesn't even make sense," I said. "Why would I steal from my own company?" Ava's eyes glinted. "Maybe you were scared he'd finally leave you, and you wanted insurance. Maybe you thought you could run away if it all went bad. I don't know, Auntie Nat." She dropped her voice to a whisper, her breath fogging the glass. "But I do know you should probably stop making a scene and call a lawyer." I stared at her, at this girl I'd known since she was missing her front teeth, at this girl I'd held while she cried over high school heartbreaks, at this girl I'd defended when teachers said she wasn't applying herself. "Ava," I said, my throat tight, "tell me you're not involved in this." She blinked slowly. "Involved in what? Your crimes?" She smiled again, hostile and sweet. "I'm just the secretary." That night, 2 detectives knocked on my front door. They were polite, professional, cold. They had a warrant to seize my work electronics, my laptop, my tablet, my phone. They asked standard questions. They recorded my answers. I tried to stay calm, but my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the pen when they asked me to sign. "When will this be resolved?" I asked. "That depends on what we find," one of them said. By morning, my name was trending in circles I'd never wanted to enter.
Local businesswoman accused of large-scale embezzlement. Real estate mogul distances himself from wife's financial crimes. The company released a statement without my input. Logan's name wasn't implicated anywhere. He was described as a victim of an internal betrayal and cooperating fully with authorities. My picture was plastered under headlines calling me a thief. My phone buzzed nonstop for a while. Some texts were shocked. Is this true? Please tell me this is a mistake. Others were vicious. I always knew something was off about you. Guess all that success wasn't so clean after all. By the end of the week, the buzzing stopped. Nobody called to check on me. Nobody, except my attorney, wanted to hear my side. Nobody, including Rachel. When I tried to call her, the line went straight to voicemail. When I tried again, it did the same. When I opened our old chat thread, the word blocked stared back at me like a verdict. Logan moved out that weekend. He didn't tell me where he was going. He sent a short email instead. Until this is resolved, it's best for us to separate our lives. I can't have your choices destroying everything I've built. Everything he had built. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by the furniture I'd picked out, the linens I'd folded, the life I'd curated, and felt my chest crack. Then Ava started calling. The first call came from a blocked number 3 days after Logan left. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. But curiosity and dread made me swipe anyway. Hello? Her giggle slid through the speaker like perfume. Hi, Auntie Nat. I froze. Ava? She hummed. I like that you still recognize my voice. What do you want? I asked, my voice already shaking. I just wanted to check on you, she said. You know, with everything going on. Must be humiliating. What are you doing, Ava? I whispered. Why are you doing this? Doing what? She said, mock innocent. Working hard? Supporting Logan during this difficult time? Filling in all the gaps you left when you decided to start stealing from him? I didn't steal anything, I said. You know I didn't. You know me. She laughed, full and cruel. I know you're 43 and boring and tired and bossy. I know you smell like printer paper and lavender soap. I know you thought loyalty was enough to keep a man like Logan. Tears stung my eyes. Please stop. Oh, and I know what he sounds like when he says my name, she added, her voice dropping low. You never made him sound like that, did you? My stomach lurched. I'm hanging up, I said. Of course you are, she replied lightly. That's what old women do when they're out of moves. I hung up. She called again 2 nights later. This time, I let it go to voicemail. She left a message anyway. Just wanted you to know, she said, her tone satisfied. I'm wearing your robe right now, the white one you always wore after your little self-care baths. It still smells like you. Sad, soft, scared. Don't worry, I'll wash it, eventually. Another voicemail a few days after that. You were never the wife, she said. You were the sponsor, the investor, the stepping stone. You handled the boring part and then got surprised when he chose the exciting part. That's not betrayal, Auntie Nat. That's an upgrade. I saved every message, even as I cried myself to sleep. My attorney listened to them and swore under his breath. They're vile, he said, but right now they're not proof of financial wrongdoing. They do help show motive and hostility, though. We'll need everything. Weeks turned into a blurry, nauseating limbo. I was under active investigation for fraud and embezzlement. My accounts were frozen or heavily restricted.
I lived off what little personal savings hadn't been tied to the business. Every time the phone rang, my heart seized. Every knock at the door made me want to hide under the table like a child. The attorney explained the situation in brutal terms. The digital trail shows hundreds of thousands of dollars moved through shell vendors over the past year, he said. The authorizations all come from your logging. The digital signatures, the timestamps, the IP addresses, they all point to you. That's impossible, I said, for what felt like the 100th time. I didn't move that money. I didn't approve those transfers. I don't even know how to set up offshore accounts. He rubbed his temples. Someone who knows your systems, your routines, and your patterns does. Ava, I whispered. It has to be Ava. She has access to my office. She has access to my files. She sits at my old desk. She's also young, pretty, and claiming she just did what she was told, he replied. Right now, she's a cooperative, naive assistant. You're the one with the authority trail. Am I going to prison? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. We are going to fight this, he said finally. But if we can't prove you were framed, you're looking at serious time. 10 years, minimum, maybe more. 10 years. At 43, 10 years felt like a death sentence. That night, alone in my too quiet house, I walked into the bathroom and stared at my reflection. Lines around my eyes I hadn't noticed before, faint sagging at my jaw. My hair, once shiny from neglecting everything but the business, now looked dull from stress. You look every year of 43, I told myself, and he left you for 28. I pressed my palms into the cold marble counter and let myself imagine, for one dangerous moment, the bathtub filling and never getting out. Then my email pinged. The subject line made my breath catch. RE, irregular corporate structuring, important. It was from a woman I didn't know, a forensic accountant. She explained that she'd been reviewing corporate documents related to Logan's company as part of a larger investigation into offshore laundering and tax evasion across multiple firms. My name had come up repeatedly in a way that, to her, didn't make sense. The shell structures are sloppy, she wrote. Someone tried to be clever without understanding the full legal implications. In short, the company does not legally belong to your husband. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Because of an early restructuring done years ago, something Logan barely remembered and I had overseen, the controlling LLC had been registered under my maiden name. The subsequent restructures had never fully overridden that. In the eyes of the law, in quiet little lines of fine print no one bothered to read because everything looked right. I owned everything. The offices, the client contracts, the equipment, the real estate, the intellectual property, the brand. Logan had spent the last year moving dirty money through a company that legally belonged to me while framing me as the criminal. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had made the worst possible enemy out of me. Something in me snapped back into place. The panic didn't vanish, but it changed flavor. It hardened. It sharpened. It stopped being a scream and became a blade. I replied to the accountant. I agreed to meet. I met with federal investigators. I handed over everything. I gave them access to my old backups, my personal notes, every scrap of evidence I could gather. I forwarded every venomous voicemail from Ava. I dug through old emails and found small inconsistencies I'd ignored when I'd trusted them. Then I waited. But this time, I didn't wait like a victim. I waited like a weapon. For 6 long months, I watched from the sidelines while the world believed I was a thief. I watched Logan attend charity galas in tailored suits, smiling for cameras like nothing was wrong. I watched Ava pose in designer dresses in bathrooms I had chosen, with countertops I had paid for. I watched them sip champagne by pools I had signed the contracts for, laughing into each other's mouths. I watched Rachel post occasional, tight-lipped photos with Ava, eyes red, smile brittle. She still hadn't reached out to me. I knew she believed the story, that I had stolen from her daughter's future, from Logan, from everyone. I knew Logan had fed her a narrative where he was the hurt husband and Ava was the loyal assistant caught in the crossfire. Sometimes I wanted to scream. Sometimes I wanted to drive to Rachel's house and bang on the door until she let me in. Sometimes I wanted to send her everything right then and there. But the investigators told me to wait. "We need them comfortable," one agent said. "We need them arrogant. The more they think you're helpless, the bolder they'll get. The bolder they get, the more evidence we have." So I waited. And I let Ava keep calling. Because every call was another nail in her coffin. "You know what he said today?" she giggled in one voicemail. "He said he feels 25 again. You know why? Because he's not dragging dead weight." Another time, "We're thinking about having kids eventually. Can you imagine little versions of him and me running around the house you decorated? Don't worry, we'll repaint." The most vicious one came the night before everything changed. "You always loved saying you built him," she said. "Well, congrats, Auntie Nat. You built a man who doesn't need you. You built a company he's going to keep without you. You built a life you don't belong in anymore. That's your legacy." I listened to that message 3 times. Then I deleted it from my phone storage after confirming the investigators already had a copy. The investor summit was a big deal. Even from my exile, I heard about it. Logan had booked a luxury hotel ballroom, top investors flying in, press invited. It was supposed to be his victory lap, his big, "we're expanding nationwide" announcement. What he didn't know was that the date of the summit had been marked in red on a different kind of calendar. I wasn't allowed to attend, of course. I watched the live stream instead, sitting alone in my living room with my laptop open, the screen casting cold light on my face. Logan walked onto the stage in a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, perfect tie. He looked every inch the self-made man he pretended to be. Ava sat in the front row in a red dress, legs crossed, smiling up at him like he'd hung the moon. He started his speech the way he always did, with a polished story about humble beginnings, about how he'd started with nothing but a dream and grit. He left out the part where the nothing included my savings, my expertise, my late nights. He left out my name completely. About 10 minutes in, something shifted in the room. You couldn't hear it exactly. You could see it. Heads turning toward the back. Movement. Whispering. A camera angle changed and I saw them. Federal agents. 3 of them, walking calmly down the aisle. Logan saw them too. His voice faltered. Just for a moment. Then one of the agents stepped onto the stage, leaned in, and said something into his ear. Logan tried to laugh it off, speaking into the mic. "Is this about the permits for the—" The agent took the microphone out of his hand. "Logan Carter," he said, his voice echoing through the speakers. "You are under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. You have the right to remain silent." The room erupted. Investors shouted. Some stood. Some grabbed their phones. Security froze. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the chaos, Ava screamed. "This is a mistake," she shouted, pushing through the crowd. "You can't just drag him out like some criminal." 2 other agents converged on her. "Ava Thompson," one said, You are under arrest for aiding and abetting financial crimes, including, but not limited to. She tried to pull away. He told me what to do. I just did what he said. I'm just the secretary. People were filming, live streaming, posting. The entire glossy image they'd crafted shattered in real time in front of hundreds of eyes. At home, I watched with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't blur. Something like justice was finally breathing. By the time the summit ended in chaos, the company's accounts had been frozen, asset seizure orders were in motion, warrants had been executed at their shared house, devices confiscated, records copied, shell companies peeled back like rotting wallpaper. Within 48 hours, my attorney called me with a different tone. "We're filing motions," he said. "The evidence is clear. You were framed. They used your logins from internal devices, they manipulated timestamps, they forged your digital signatures. The controlling ownership of the company is legally yours. This is not going to end the way they thought it would." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in a year. The charges against me didn't disappear overnight. The legal system doesn't move that fast. But they started to crumble, piece by piece. Evidence that had once pointed to me now pointed away, highlighting the elaborate work it had taken to make me look guilty. The media shifted too. Wife framed by husband and his young secretary. Real estate mogul's empire secretly owned by disposable wife. Rachel showed up at my door 3 nights after the arrests. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, eyes swollen, like she'd been crying for days. When I opened the door, she just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like she'd forgotten how to speak. "Hi," I said, "because what else do you say to the woman who chose her daughter's lies over your truth?" She held up a thick envelope with trembling hands. "They showed me everything," she whispered. "The transfers, the messages, the emails, the voicemails Ava left you, the way she laughed when she talked about replacing you." Her voice broke on that last word. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear to God, Nad, I didn't know. She told me you were stealing from them. She told me you'd been hiding money for years. She said you were jealous, bitter, trying to ruin them. I believed my daughter." "Of course you did," I said quietly. "She's your child." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She admitted it. In the interrogation, she admitted everything. The affair, the transfers, how she changed your password when you were out of town, how she copied your signature from scanned documents. She admitted she called you to taunt you. She said she wanted to push you over the edge. Those were her exact words. My chest tightened, but I stayed still. "I lost my daughter," Rachel said. "She's going to prison, Nat. My baby is going to prison because she wanted your life." For a long moment, we just stood there in the doorway, the past 25 years between us like a living thing. "You believed her over me," I said finally. My voice was soft, but the words were sharp. When I said I was innocent, when I begged you to listen, you blocked me. You left me alone. "I know," she said, tears spilling over. "And I will never forgive myself for that. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know that I know now. I know who you are, and I know who she chose to become." I could have slammed the door in her face. Part of me wanted to. But another part, the part that had held her hand in hospital waiting rooms and danced with her in my kitchen after her divorce settlement came through, couldn't. "Come inside," I said quietly. "We're too old to have emotional breakdowns on the porch." She let out a watery laugh that turned into a sob. We sat at my kitchen table, the same place we'd once planned her wedding, my wedding, our careers, our escape plans. Now we planned how she would visit her daughter in a federal facility and how I would testify in a courtroom about the girl I loved like family. Months later, the legal processes finished what the arrests had started. Logan was convicted on multiple counts: wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, conspiracy. The judge called his actions a calculated betrayal of trust at every level. He was sentenced to years in prison. Ava took a plea deal, but it still came with real time. Less than Logan, but enough to mark her forever. Enough to make sure she'd never work in a position of financial trust again. Civil suits followed. Investors sued the company. Vendors sued. Clients sued. But the company was me. My attorney negotiated settlements. Insurance covered some. Asset seizures covered more. We sold properties. We restructured. Slowly, painfully, we clawed our way to a place where the debts were paid and the books were clean. And through all of that chaos, one quiet, undeniable fact remained. I was the legal owner. The offices were mine. The brand was mine. The name on the deed of the building Ava used to strut through in stilettos was mine. The house she'd worn my robe in? Seized and liquidated. I didn't buy it back. Instead, I moved into a smaller, lighter place, still beautiful, but mine alone. I picked every piece of furniture with intention this time, nothing that reminded me of years spent trying to make a man comfortable enough to stay. I rebuilt the company slowly. I rehired some people. I let others go. I made it clear that corruption, arrogance, and cruelty had no place there anymore. I sat in the CEO's office, the one Logan had once kept solely for himself, and put my name on the door. The first time I walked into that office as the boss, not the silent support, I paused for a moment and looked around. I could almost see the ghosts. Logan at the desk, feet up, bragging on the phone. Ava leaning over him, her hand on his shoulder, laughing at some joke about handling the boring stuff. Me in the hallway, arms full of files, invisible. I closed my eyes. Then I opened them and sat down in the chair. "This is my company," I said out loud, just to hear it. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. A year after the verdict, I woke up on a Saturday and realized something wild. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't checking the door 3 times before bed. I wasn't jumping at every unknown number that called my phone. I wasn't scanning social media for my own name. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoes had dropped. The building had collapsed. And somehow, I'd crawled out. If you're listening to this and you feel something in your chest twisting because some part of this sounds familiar, because your partner dismisses your concerns, or your friend suddenly got more comfortable with accessing your life than respecting it, don't ignore it. I did. And it almost cost me everything. They thought my age made me replaceable. They thought my loyalty made me soft. They thought my silence made me powerless. They were wrong on every count. I was the legal owner. I was the quiet one watching everything. And I was the only one who walked out of that fire with anything left but ashes. I'm Natalie, and this was my last straw. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe.